America has been defined and influenced all by the dividing, uniting, and persuasive actions we commonly refer to as protesting. This action of protesting has been present in American history since the beginning. Three movements that utilize this action of protesting will be the highlight of this story today. Although they vouch for different causes, the anti war movement, the feminist movement, and the LGBTQ movement shared and differed in their goals, tactics, successes, and even failures. Ultimately, one movement in particular, the anti war movement, proved to be the most successful in achieving its goals. But first, we'll start off by comparing and contrasting each of the movements, only to finally conclude with why the anti war movement played its cards right and came out on top. The anti war movement was primarily characterized by their desire on not only revealing the horrors of war, but also to promote against further United States involvement within the ongoing Vietnam War. That was their main, distinctive, concrete goal, which, because of this, ends up being one of their strong suits. The LGBTQ and feminist movements, however, took a more personal route when it came to their goals. The feminist movement's primary goal was to promote equality on all fronts, meaning the economical, the social, and the political, for women. Whereas the LGBTQ movement focused on ending discrimination and promoting equality for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgendered community. What differs these two movements from the anti war movement is that they focus on promoting a select group of people. To put it simply, the goals of the LGBTQ and feminist movements, although definitely important in nature, were more complex to achieve. They were complex because of the many different levels, such as the political, the social, and the economical, that they needed to satisfy in order to reach their ultimate goal of equality. And because of this overwhelming feat, it required a distinct approach that they simply weren't prepared for. Although the LGBTQ and the feminist movement shared a similar genre of goals, the tactics used to achieve them were different in style and execution, whereas the anti war movement strove to utilize pop culture as their main enterprise of influence. As witnessed within the primary documents from Bob Dylan and Loretta Lynn to Phil Ochs and John Lennon, the anti war movement had a musical army of their own and ultimately succeeded in influencing audiences with their broad range of lyrics that actually crossed any and every boundary, being empathetic to every race, gender, class, and ethnicity. A particularly powerful example would be Loretta Lynn's song titled Dear Uncle Sam.
I really love my country, but I also love my man.
Although it did pull on your heartstrings, it's strong evidence to the effectiveness the anti war movement's emotional tactics were in achieving their goals of influencing the war believing silent majority. Simply, they were just being brutally honest about war's horrific atrocities at a personal and sympathetic level that everybody could relate to. Countless examples like these actually lie within the primary documents, with another example being Phil Ochs' ballad titled What Are You Fighting For? That proves to seriously question the motives behind the silent majority that so fervently believed in the war. The feminist movement also utilized strong appeals, with one example in particular from a document titled If Men Could Menstruate by Gloria Steinem. Gloria demonstrates this inequality felt by women in a rather unique yet effective manner. She compares the differences of opinions and experiences if men could actually menstruate. She writes, quote, if men could menstruate, menstruation would become an enviable, worthy, and masculine event, end quote. She even goes on further to say that the government would fund a national institute for menstruation in order to prevent work loss amongst men. Not only is this powerful, but it's strongly impactful because it illustrates this unfair societal and even political view women had to bear. Although the primary documents given for the LGBTQ movement focus upon more of the female influences and lesbian groups rather than the LGBTQ community as a whole, they still provided evidence towards the protests they fought for. Within a document titled The Woman Identified Woman by Radical Lesbians, they take a more experiential approach, focusing on personal experiences and societal views rather than the logistics of it all. They reveal that society utilizes the term lesbian as rather derogatory and primarily used to separate them from the rest of the community. In particular, the document attempts to equalize the situation, stating the following, in quote, in a society in which sexual expression is allowed to follow feelings, the categories of homosexuality and heterosexuality would disappear, end quote. This personal questioning and debating of society's ideas of what a real relationship can be, while also placing homosexuality and heterosexuality on a level playing field, was a common yet effective tactic amongst the LGBTQ movement. The successes and failures of each movement were actually quite mixed and diverse. Each of them had their own strengths and weaknesses. One of the primary failures within the LGBTQ movement and feminist movement wasn't only limited to their overly complex goal to achieve equality. Another failure was this growing conflict and division felt within both of the movements. And this is especially noticeable when considering the document titled Women of the World Unite, We Have Nothing to Lose But Our Men. It states, quote, at the moment, our group is largely white. Occasionally a black woman will come to meetings, and that's great. However, there is a reluctance on the part of white women to assume that black women want to be part of an integrated group, end quote. The division as seen within here was definitely present. In this case, it was race-related, which was actually quite common amongst the feminist movement. And because of these different obstacles they faced, conflicts would often arise, whether it be because of race or even another factor. Despite these failures felt by the feminist and LGBTQ movements, they both shared a similar, albeit rather ironic, success as evident within the primary documents. They shared the success of being aware and conscious of this growing divide within their movements. And this is especially noticeable within the document titled The Funeral Oration for the Burial of Traditional Womanhood, which, in my opinion, is possibly the strongest document to boot for these movements, because it's filled with awareness and a clear maturity. The document summarizes this, stating, quote, we must see that we can only solve our problem together, and that we cannot solve it individually, end quote. This is necessary in understanding that although they did have their failures, this growing awareness is a success of its own right, because it provided them a route to progress. Although it's a success, the anti-war movement proved to be the best ticket on the ballot when it came to being the most successful out of the three, primarily because of their concrete goal, their cohesive efforts, and even their effective tactics. Paramount to the anti-war movement's success was actually its simple yet timely purpose of promoting a lesser United States involvement within the Vietnam War. Their goal was simple and yet concrete and didn't have to involve going through countless different realms to achieve it. Another characteristic was their strength in numbers, or their unity as a whole. The anti-war movement was primarily unified under a common goal, and they rarely factored apart. With the song Give Peace a Chance by John Lennon, this unified plea aimed at the silent majority to, quote, just give peace a chance, end quote. And this helps to hint towards that unified movement under that singular, solid goal. Ultimately, from the countless examples within the primary documents to their unified status as a movement made the anti-war movement the most successful in comparison to the feminist and the LGBTQ movements. With each movement comes their own set of outcomes, goals, and tactics, and after comparing and contrasting them, we can see that they all had their own battles to be fought, with some, like the fight for equality, still being waged against even today. Each movement, whether successful or not, still speaks tremendously to the history of America, and how protesting is only just a piece of the puzzle to the complexity that is the United States of America.